It has been revealed that across Europe from the years 600 to 1800, almost a quarter of royal deaths were caused by accident, fatality in battle, or assassination. In fact, 15% of all these regal expirations were just outright murder. Let's travel back in time now to the Middle Ages and take a look at some of these deaths and the circumstances surrounding them. Welcome to Medieval Madness. Let's talk about something cool today. Have you ever wanted a personal night sky in your room? Let's dive into the Galaxy Projector and see what it's all about. If you've been thinking of adding a little something special to your space, then this is exactly the kind of lighting you need. It will transform any room into a planetarium and give it a truly unique look and feel. But not only that, it's also a smart device. Let's look at some of the features. First off, its RGB colors, brightness, rotation speed, on-off timers, and many more are fully customizable. Grab your phone. With its app, you can change everything, make it truly yours. Love using Amazon Alexa or Google Assistant? Well, the Galaxy Projector is on your team. Just say the word and it obeys, from switching on to changing modes, complete hands-free magic. And guess what? It's energy efficient too. Enjoy your personal Galaxy without worrying about your electricity bill skyrocketing. For those like me who appreciate good tech, this is for you. The Galaxy Projector is a modern gadget with timeless appeal. Get your projector by clicking the link below. Use our discount code MedievalMadness to get 15% off. And now for today's video. Welcome to Medieval Madness. Galswintha, Sigebert, and Chilperic. The very wealthy Princess Galswintha travelled across the Pyrenees from her home on the Iberian Peninsula. She had been betrothed to the 6th century Merovingian king of Neustria, Chilperic I, and sent to Rouen in France for their marriage. Chilperic had his army pledge their allegiance to his new bride on her arrival and gifted her several cities, including Bordeaux and Limoges, as a wedding gift. On receipt of a hefty dowry, Chilperic had promised Galswintha's father, Athengil, the Visigothic king of Hispania, that he would commit to his daughter and adhere to the Visigothic code of marriage that forbade mistresses and concubines. Despite this, Chilperic continued to have his lover, Fridgund, visit his bedchamber. It should be mentioned at this point that Fridgund was the servant of Chilperic's first wife who was divorced and sent to a convent. When Galswintha complained, even though he apparently loved her dearly, she was found strangled in her bed and Chilperic married Fridgund 3 days later. The murder of Galswintha caused a bloody civil war between Neustria and Austrasia that went on for about 40 years because Galswintha's sister, Queen Brunhild, was married to Chilperic's brother, King Sigebert, who ruled the kingdom of Austrasia, and they were bent on revenge. In 573, Fridgund arranged for Sigebert to be assassinated. She is also supposedly responsible for many other murders, including the death of her stepson, several bishops and nobles, and the attempted murder of her daughter. It is possible she was involved in the mysterious death of Chilperic, who was stabbed to death whilst returning from the hunt in 584. William II. King William II was the third son of William the Conqueror. According to the chronicler William of Malmesbury, in the summer of 1100, the king, who was nicknamed Rufus possibly because he had red hair, went into the forest attended by a few persons, including a noble named Walter Tyrrell. At the setting of the sun, William saw a stag and, drawing his bow and letting fly an arrow, slightly wounded the animal. In what could have been an accident, Tyrrell also loosed an arrow that fatally pierced the king's breast. On seeing that he had killed the king, Tyrrell quickly leapt swiftly upon his horse and escaped by spurring him to his utmost speed. The rest of the hunting party panicked and fled, readying themselves to swear their loyalty to their next king. William's dead body was taken to Winchester Cathedral by cart, the blood dripping from it all the way. William's younger brother Henry I immediately ascended the throne and was crowned king. Henry indeed had a lot to gain from the death of his brother, and it's possible that he hired Tyrrell for the assassination. It's also possible that it was just an accident. Either way, William was not a popular monarch, and his death was lamented by few. Alboin. This was the king who led the Germanic Lombards south to conquer the north of Italy in the second half of the 6th century. When his father died, Alboin became the king of Pannonia, a large province that covered part of Upper Italy and was bounded on the north and east by the Danube River. Pannonia was in conflict with their neighbours, the Gepids, an East Germanic tribe similar to the Goths and the Vandals. Alboin finally defeated the Gepids, killed their leader, King Cunimund, and turned his skull into a drinking vessel. He then married Cunimund's daughter, Rosamund, by force. At a lavish feast held in Verona in 572, Alboin ordered Rosamund to drink merrily with her father, making her sip from the skull cap. Outraged, Rosamund began to plot her revenge. Disguised as a servant, she seduced Alboin's bodyguard, Peredio. After revealing her real identity, she blackmailed Peredio by threatening to tell Alboin of the affair unless he helped her to murder the king. Knowing that he would be executed for sleeping with the queen, Peredio agreed. When Alboin went to his bedchamber for his afternoon nap, Peredio sneaked into his room, removed his master's sword, hacked him to death, and supposedly buried him beneath the palace steps. Rosamund's revenge was complete. Erik V of Denmark. Erik Klipping ascended to the Danish throne in 1259 after the death of his father. He was too young to rule, so his mother, Queen Margaret, was appointed regent. As an adult ruler, King Erik was not well liked and hacked off his nobles so much that he was forced to sign a Danish-style Magna Carta to limit his authority over them. It's thought that several of these nobles made an oath to murder King Erik. In 1286, the king was at Viborg on a hunt with a small group of attendants. The party became lost and stayed over in the village of Finderup in a church barn. A shadowy gang of Franciscan monks rode into the village and headed to the barn where Erik and his men were sleeping. They stealthily entered the barn and stabbed the king to death. It was unclear who had plotted the murder as the assassins made a quick getaway, but it is said that Stig Andersen Hevheid stuck the first blow as a revenge for the king sleeping with his wife. Stig, along with Count Jacob of Halland and 7 other men, were accused of the crime in their absence and were outlawed. Stig went off to become a pirate and raided along the Danish coast until he died 7 years later. Erik was not a popular ruler and had many enemies, including a duke and an archbishop, so Stig was certainly not the only person with reason to want the king dead. Tsarevich Dmitry. Ivan the Terrible didn't have a great track record when it came to his sons. When his firstborn was a baby of just 8 months, he drowned when the royal boat overturned. Then Ivan killed his second son in a fit of rage by beating him around the head with his scepter. Ivan was unlucky with his wives too, having 6 of them, 3 of whom died in suspicious circumstances, possibly by poisoning, and 3 ended up in convents as nuns. Now it was down to son number 3, Fyodor I, to become Tsar on his father's death. He was by all accounts a good-natured, pious man, but he was also said to be weak and disabled, so his brother-in-law Boris Godunov was made regent. Fyodor had a younger brother who Boris believed was a threat to his power, and it was no surprise when the 8-year-old was discovered with a knife sticking out of his neck. Boris claimed that the boy had done it to himself whilst in the throes of an epileptic seizure. This accidental cutting of his own throat meant that when Fyodor died childless, Boris was able to take the throne for himself. Aedh O'Connor. In the early 13th century, Aedh ruled as a king of Connaught in the west of Ireland. Aedh was famous for being handsome and a bit of a ladies' man. The annals of Connaught record that Aedh was the guest of an Irish justice named Geoffrey de Mares in 1228. Geoffrey ordered a serving girl to bathe his visitor. Suddenly, her husband, a carpenter, burst into the room in a jealous rage and hacked Aedh to death in the bath. On the orders of Geoffrey, the carpenter was hanged the next day. According to the annals, though, this was not a crime of passion as you might think, but rather it was Aedh's son who had plotted the assassination with the carpenter to take his father's throne. Andrew of Hungary. Andrew was the second surviving son of King Charles I of Hungary. He was betrothed to his cousin Joanna in 1334. When King Robert of Naples died in 1343, it was his teenage granddaughter Joanna who would become his heir. Everyone assumed that the couple would rule together, but Joanna had other ideas, and when the Pope declared that she should rule alone, just as if she were a man, Joanna was crowned sole monarch of Naples in 1344. The Neapolitans supported Joanna and hated the Hungarian Andrew and his foreign entourage. Before long, Andrew was fearing for his life and wrote to his mother Elizabeth of Poland with talk of fleeing the kingdom. Queen Elizabeth intervened with Pope Clement VI on her son's behalf to arrange Andrew's coronation. Andrew was right to be afraid. On a hunting trip to Aversa, Andrew was set upon in the middle of the night. As a pregnant Joanna cowered in their bedchamber, the 17-year-old Andrew was beaten and then hanged by a cord from the balcony. Some of the assassins pulled on his leg to speed up his death. The couple's son was born 3 months later. Queen Joanna's involvement in the murder plot was never proven, and she was twice acquitted of any charges at subsequent trials. Joanna of Naples. Whether she was involved in the murder of her husband or not, when the newly widowed Joanna declared that she would marry one of her cousins instead of Andrew's younger brother, his relatives were quick to invade Naples. However, Joanna was able to retain her kingdom. But revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold, and the Hungarians were happy to bide their time. In 1380, Charles of Durazzo rebelled against his cousin Joanna. He had been given the throne by one of the church's warring popes. Charles, backed by an enthusiastic Hungarian army, was able to invade Naples and capture Joanna. She named Louis I of Anjou as her heir as a way to gain help, and Louis raised a French army to come to her aid. But by the time Louis had reached the outskirts of Rome, Joanna was already dead. Charles claimed that Joanna died from natural causes. Thomas of Neum, the secretary to Pope Urban VI, reported that she had been strangled with a silk cord by Hungarian soldiers while she prayed at the chapel of Muro Castle. Although Marie of Blois, the wife of Louis I of Anjou, said that she was murdered by 4 Hungarian men who bound her hands and feet and smothered her between 2 feather mattresses so that her body received no marks. Whatever the method, it seems that Joanna was assassinated by the Hungarians 37 years after the death of Andrew of Hungary, her first husband. Charles of Durazzo. And finally, despite the French invasion, once he had murdered his rival Joanna, Charles became king of Naples. Louis very kindly dropped dead from illness, so that helped a lot. Having already successfully taken one kingdom from a woman, Charles thought that he might as well have another go, so in 1385, when King Louis I of Hungary died, leaving his throne to his daughter Mary, Charles ousted her and forced her to abdicate, taking power of the throne. What Charles didn't consider though was how much that was going to upset Mary's mother Elizabeth of Bosnia. She was a formidable woman to get on the wrong side of, and had already secured the throne of Poland for her other daughter, Jadwiga. She welcomed Charles, feigned friendship, and invited him to stay at Buda Castle. Once there, Elizabeth was present when she had Charles hacked to death in her apartments in 1386. Elizabeth and Mary were imprisoned, and in a final twist, Elizabeth was unable to see the restoration of her daughter to the throne because Charles' widow had her strangled by guards while she watched. After her liberation, Mary became co-ruler with her husband Sigismund until the end of her life. Thank you for watching this episode of Medieval Madness. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these videos, and I'll see you next week for another one. Until then, have a great week. Cheers.